Hi, my name is Pierrette and I want to welcome you to my channel, Pierrette's Kitchen. This is our very first video, so I thought I would try to do something that I think is pretty easy. We're just going to do some baked chicken with herbs and sauteed green beans. So I'm going to walk you through it step by step. We're going to start with the chicken. So you need a glass pan and you're going to need some aluminum foil. We're going to start with the chicken and we're going to put it in the glass pan with a little bit of olive oil. So just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on the bottom. I'd say probably 2 to 3 tablespoons, but it depends on how much you want to use. You just want it to kind of coat the bottom of the pan so your chicken doesn't stick to it. So if you have about that much when you're done, that should be perfect. Now, I personally like chicken thighs. I think they taste better. They have more fat in them, and I like that. But you could use chicken breasts if you wanted, but it will change the cook time a little bit, and you have to maybe cook them a little less so that they don't dry out, because thighs, the dark meat, does take a little longer. These are boneless and skinless, and I'm just gonna lay them in the bottom of the pan. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm just laying them in the bottom of the pan carefully. If you don't have tongs, you can use your fingers, but I don't want to get my fingers all chickeny, so I'm just going to use the tongs. And we're going to end up, I'm actually going to season this layer, and then I'll season the next layer on top of them. So you could use Montreal steak if you wanted. It's basically a salt, pepper, garlic combination, and that makes it easier. You don't have to buy as many things, but I think it's probably a pretty safe bet that everyone has salt, pepper, and garlic powder, not garlic salt, because if you put in garlic salt and then you add salt, it's going to be way too salty. So we're going to do a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and I'll show you how much we're adding. Give me just a second. I just like to do a light dusting of salt and pepper, and then I kind of put a lot more of the other herbs instead, so that I get more flavor from the herbs than the salt. So you can see it's just a little bit lightly dusted. And then I'm going to add Italian seasoning. Again, just a sprinkle so that everything is kind of evenly coated. Italian seasoning, a little bit of paprika. I usually buy my spices from a place here locally in Las Vegas, actually Henderson, called Sheffield's Spice, and they mix their own combinations, and I really like that. And then I just put them in the jars so that I can use them as I need them and refill them as necessary. So a little salt, a little pepper, and now we're going to do a little garlic. And just sprinkle it over. And this is what the first layer looks like. I'm going to hold on to it so it doesn't fall out of the pan when I show you. So evenly distributed spices. And now we're going to do another layer on top so that everything gets seasoned individually. If you put your 2 layers and then only season 1 layer, then the bottom layer is going to feel like neglected. All right. So just putting on that second layer, and don't forget to throw in any extra little pieces that you have. Now this layer only has 3 pieces, so we're only going to season those 3 pieces and not extra season that 4th one for the same reason. So a little bit of salt. Keep in mind you can always add more salt, but it's really tough to take it away or mask it if you put too much. So I always like to go easy on salt, especially if you have issues with high blood pressure or anything like that. So just salt and pepper. And then we're going to go through the same process. We're going to do Italian seasoning. Again, just kind of sprinkle it on so it's all evenly distributed. I used to work with a lady years ago when I was young, and her grandmother made this chicken, and she brought it in one day and shared it with me, and I thought it was so flavorful. I asked her for the recipe, and her grandmother didn't give out recipes easily, but she gave me this recipe, and it's been in my cooking repertoire for the last, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but I was 19 and I'm not anymore. So this would be the Italian seasoning, salt and pepper. We're going to add the paprika. And a little bit of rosemary. And the garlic. And I promise you, your family will not be disappointed with this. Now, what's really cool about this is we're gonna bake it in the oven with the foil on top, which helps to steam it and keep the moistness in. And when we're done, we'll have a bunch of jus, which is the chicken juice that we can use, either save it for soups, or today we're gonna make a gravy with it. So this is your chicken, all seasoned, all ready to go. We're gonna take a piece of foil. Tuck it in. I like to tuck and wrap the edges, make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want any of that steam escaping, because that's what's gonna help to cook your chicken and keep it moist. Okay, so we're gonna pop this in the oven. So I've preheated my oven for 350 degrees. Put it on the bottom shelf. And once this starts to cook, we'll be able to cheat and tell when it's ready, because the juice on the bottom is going to start to bubble. For right now, though, you should know that if you have a convection oven, you want to turn it down to probably to 325. Convection ovens cook at about 25 degrees hotter than conventional ovens. And this is a convection oven, but I don't have it set on convection. I have it just set on a conventional setting. Gas ovens also cook differently. So you need to play with the time and the temperature a little bit for what works best for your oven, but 350 degrees is a good starting point, and it's a pretty universal cooking temperature. So we're gonna put this in here, and we're gonna check it in about 20 minutes and see how we're progressing. What we're gonna be looking for is for liquid to be forming on the bottom and some bubbles, that it looks like it's simmering. So I'm gonna close this up for now, and we'll check back in about 20 minutes and see where we are. Okay, our timer's about to go off. We have no time left. So I did set it for an extra 10 minutes beyond the 20 minutes we originally talked about. But the reason for that is because they're chicken thighs and they did take a little bit longer to cook. I would recommend that if you're doing chicken breasts, you check them at 20 minutes and see how they're progressing. And you can see that it's bubbling. You have a little bit of liquid bubbling. And this is definitely the hardest part of the whole process. We're gonna take this out and we're gonna let it rest for about 20 minutes. And what happens is all that steam is gonna condense and it's gonna add to your jus. And in the end, you're gonna have all this lovely liquid gold chicken flavored broth that you can either save, or today we're gonna make a gravy with it to go over the green beans. So we're just gonna let this rest for about 20 minutes and we'll check back with you then. So we're back, and Bear, our 100-pound yellow lab, is hovering because he thinks there will be snackage involved. So you may see him wander through as we're working. But our chicken's been resting for about 20 minutes. We're gonna remove the foil and we're gonna save that for a second. Now, I don't know if you can see, it's still steaming, which is fine. I wanna just show you how much juice there is in here, because this juice is what I call liquid gold. This is what makes the best sauces and gravies, because it's the pure essence of the chicken. So I'm gonna take these pieces out and put them in the bowl. And then we're gonna cover them with the foil and let it continue to steam, because the more steam we save, the more juice we collect, which makes our sauce better. So I'm just gonna put the chicken in here. It's nice and cooked through. And we're gonna cover this with foil. And just put it aside and let it continue to cool and make more flavor for us. Then we're gonna take this broth, we're gonna pour it into this pan. And we're gonna make a gravy to go with our chicken. So there it is. That's all the best flavor that we can get from our food. So I'm gonna turn this on. Now I would say this is probably a high flame where it sort of fans out more. This is probably a medium flame where it's coming up to the bottom of the pan but not really spreading. And then a low flame is where you kind of barely see it out of the gas. If you have electric, you're gonna have numbers, and honestly, I'm a terrible cook on an electric stove, so I can't give you any advice there. You're on your own. I hope you figure it out. But I would assume the bigger the number, the hotter the burner. Okay, so we have this chicken broth. If you wanted to make more than what's here, which is, let's go ahead and do that because we're gonna serve a couple of people. So we're just gonna add a little bit of water. And then now we've diluted all that great flavor, so we're just gonna add in a little bit. I like better than bouillon. It doesn't have MSG, and I think it works really well. I'm putting in about a half a teaspoon, and I'm just gonna mix that up. We're gonna turn the flame up on this so it gets nice and warm and starts to bubble. And we're done with the bouillon for now. We're gonna take a wire whisk, kind of stir that around. Now, if you object to having the little pieces of chicken in your broth, you could have strained it when you put it in here. I don't really mind that. I think sometimes when you get a little bite of that when you're eating, it really adds to the flavor of the gravy. So the next step is we're gonna take an empty jar and we're gonna add a heaping tablespoon of flour. I have flour and sugar that I keep by my stove always because you never know when you're going to need them, and sometimes I just don't want to drag out those great big containers. So I'm doing about a heaping tablespoon of flour, and then I'm going to add some cold water. So out of my fridge, I'm filling this jar about half full of cold water. And I'm just gonna shake it up. And that is the easiest way to make a flour water mix to thicken your gravy. And you don't get lumps. So if you want a gravy that doesn't have lumps, this is the quickest and easiest way to do it. Our broth is simmering. So now I'm just gonna stir in the flour mixture, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So it's got a pretty good boil going. I'm gonna just turn it down to about a medium or a medium-low heat so you can still see it's bubbling. And I'm going to slowly pour in some of the flour mixture, and you can see that it's gonna start to thicken. I'm just gonna add enough that it gets to the consistency that I want it to be. And I like it a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna just keep adding this flour water mixture. And I don't know if you can see, but the viscosity is definitely changing. It's thickening up as we go. So it is bubbling and it's thickening up nicely. We're gonna add just a little bit of white wine for flavor. And we're gonna let that simmer on very low heat for a couple of minutes. And now we're gonna tackle green beans. So we're heating up our pan. We're gonna add a little bit of butter because I'm French, Pierrette, French. You can use olive oil if you prefer, but I like the flavor that butter gives. That's about 3/4 of a tablespoon to a tablespoon of butter. Now, as the butter melts, you don't want to let it brown, but you do want to let it melt enough that it's going to coat the pan for you, and it's also going to it'll be warm enough that when you put in your green beans, you get a little bit of a sizzle. That's always yummy. Now, these are haricots verts, which is a smaller French green bean than the typical green beans. I personally prefer these, but you could do the same recipe with regular green beans. I like these because they don't have that thick string, sinuous fibrous string down the back, and they cook up, and I think they're a little more tender and sweeter than regular green beans. So this is my preference. We're gonna cook these up in the butter. It's starting to sizzle a little bit now, so we're just gonna take a handful. And this is probably enough for 2 people, about a half a package. If you wanted to cook up the rest and put them in a container and take them to lunch the next day with the rest of the chicken, then you already have your lunch for tomorrow and you don't have to buy fast food. So you're eating healthy too. So we're just gonna cook these up. I'm gonna add a few more. All right. And I always put just a little bit of salt. And if I do season them with pepper, I use white pepper because it's not quite as pungent as black pepper, and we already have black pepper on our chicken. So to kind of minimize the amount of pepper that you have in the meal, I prefer to use white pepper on these when I do. So we're gonna take a lemon. These are off my tree, so they're very, very fresh and organic because there are no pesticides. And I'm going to cut it in half and squeeze it. You can catch the seeds with your other hand, or you can use a reamer, but it's not necessary if you don't have one. It's an added expense that you may not want to have. And if you don't have lemon juice, you can use wine or pineapple juice or even water, but I like the flavor the lemon juice gives. I'm gonna dump out those seeds, and we're gonna leave that covered for a couple of minutes until they're bright, bright green. I like mine al dente, which means a little bit crunchy. You can cook yours longer if you like them that way, but I'm just gonna show you how to do it, and then you can adjust it with the cook time that you prefer. It's been a couple of minutes, probably 2 minutes, I'd say, and I can see that these are turning bright green under the lid with the steam. So I'm gonna take the lid off and just give them a little bit of a toss. You can see that butter with the juice that we added is making a nice coating on the green beans. I'm gonna give them another couple of minutes without the lid, and I'm also gonna sprinkle some almonds on it. And these will get a little bit of color, and they'll just add a little bit of flavor too and texture. And then give them another toss, and we're gonna let these go just about another minute or 2. And they're really close. When they start to kind of catch on the bottom a little bit and caramelize, that's when they're just about perfect. This is right about where I like mine. So I'm gonna turn these off, and we're gonna serve everything that we've cooked. All right, you guys, this is the moment of truth. This is what you've been waiting for. We have made herbed chicken with green beans with almonds and lemon, and it took us about half an hour for the chicken to cook, 20 minutes for it to rest, which you can run to the store or, you know, do some work on your computer from home, whatever you need to do for that 20 minutes. And then about 5 minutes to make the gravy, and about 5 minutes for the green beans. So all in all, we're still probably close to an hour for a fully prepared meal, and I want to show you what it looks like now. So we've had our chicken resting, and we're going to take that now and just serve it up. So a piece of chicken with all those lovely herbs and all that flavor looks so good. And I told you if you covered it with foil, it would make more broth. So we're going to take that broth and pour the rest of that in our sauce. And we're going to give it a stir. And then we're going to serve up our green beans. Now, I personally would prefer to eat something with sauce out of a bowl, but some people prefer to eat off of a plate. Typically, they feel like it gives them more room to move the food around while they're cutting. So it's up to you. I thought I'd show you both ways. Want to make sure and get some of these really yummy almonds on top of those green beans, because those have kind of picked up all those great flavors that we mixed up. And then we're just gonna spoon a little bit of our sauce over the top. And that is all there is to it. And it really didn't take us very long, and I think you're gonna love it. So it's chicken with haricot vert or green beans and chicken broth sauce. And that was really easy. I hope you guys try it, and I hope you'll let me know what you think. Take care and have a great meal.